Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Friday the United States could achieve its objectives in Iran without the use of any ground troops. He also said he expected the operation to conclude in a matter of weeks, despite recent deployments of additional forces to the region.
As the Department of War has consistently outlined, we are on or ahead of schedule in that operation and expect to conclude it at the appropriate time here in a matter of weeks, not months. And the progress is going very well. Obviously, we have some work to do. We have to finish the job, and we are finishing that job.
Rubio spoke to reporters after meeting with G7 foreign ministers in France to discuss the conflict launched by the U.S. and Israel late last month. He said Iran may decide to set up a tolling system for the Strait of Hormuz and insisted that European and Asian countries that benefit from trade through the waterway should contribute to efforts to secure free passage through the strait once the conflict ends. This comes on the same day that 2 Chinese container ships turned back after trying to exit the Gulf via the strait, as indicated by the green triangles in this ship tracking data, despite assurances from Iran that Chinese vessels could pass. The operator of the ships was not immediately available for comment. Iranian state media reported Friday that 3 container ships of various nationalities were turned back from the Strait of Hormuz after warnings from the Revolutionary Guard's naval force. The war and the effective closure of the waterway that about a fifth of the world's oil and gas traverses have led to a surge in oil prices as the conflict continues. Benchmark Brent futures have risen more than 50% since the war began and briefly topped $119 a barrel last week after Iran attacked energy targets across the Middle East and threatened vessels attempting to sail through the strait. Some analysts polled by Reuters said oil could hit $200 a barrel if Iranian export facilities are damaged.
The
Yemeni armed forces, with God's help and reliance upon him, have carried out their first military operation. This operation involved a salvo of ballistic missiles targeting sensitive military objectives of the Israeli enemy in the south of occupied Palestine. The operation coincided with the heroic operations carried out by our Mujahideen brothers in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The operation successfully achieved its objectives, thanks be to God.
U.S. stocks closed sharply lower on Friday, with the Dow dropping about 1.75% to confirm it is in correction territory, the S&P 500 shedding 1 2/3%, and the Nasdaq plummeting more than 2%. All 3 indexes suffered their 5th straight weekly decline, the longest such streak in nearly 4 years. Friday's sell-off came a day after the Nasdaq confirmed it was in correction territory, which followed the small-cap Russell 2000's correction 1 week ago. Markets on Friday took little solace from President Donald Trump's announcement that he gave Iran another 10 days to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face the destruction of its energy plants. This came after Iran rejected his proposals to end the war he launched in tandem with Israel. Alexander Morris is CEO and Chief Investment Officer at FM Investments.
Investors are now feeling what happens when war breaks out and the economic prosperity that we've enjoyed starts to be questioned. We have to put this in context with history. It's normal throughout the course of any year. We see a correction of 10% for a period of time. But I think in general, equity markets feel not so great. Bond markets feel not so great. But that's really symptom. That's not actual disease. That's really a byproduct of most investors focusing on the price of oil and becoming armchair geopoliticians, less so than the traders they used to be. If we give this some time, in a few weeks, we probably see this work itself out.
Mega caps were the biggest drag on the S&P 500, with Nvidia down more than 2% as the biggest weight, while Amazon dropped 4%. Software shares also came under renewed selling pressure, with the S&P 500 Software and Services Index closing at its lowest level since November 6, 2023. Among other movers, cruise operator Carnival slumped more than 4% after cutting its annual adjusted profit forecast. Rival Norwegian Cruise Line tumbled nearly 7%. Meanwhile, money market participants who were pricing in 2 rate cuts from the Federal Reserve before the war broke out are now expecting none. Instead, markets are now pricing in a roughly 25% chance for a rate hike at the Fed's October meeting.
Aerial defense systems like this one, intercepting an Iranian missile over the West Bank, are becoming increasingly unsustainable. Why? Because cheap attack drones are reshaping modern warfare by making it easier for smaller and less wealthy nations to strike back. To put it simply, the US and its allies are sometimes firing interceptors worth millions of dollars to shoot down drones worth tens of thousands.
Bombers built in American factories bear the famous rings of the RAF.
For decades, rich countries have ruled the skies. That's because they could pay for advanced aircraft and crew training. Let's take the United States. It has some of the world's most expensive jets and bombers, and it has deployed a lot of them in Operation Epic Fury, its controversial campaign with Israel against Iran. But taking part for the first time is this: the FLM-136 Lucas, or Low-Cost Uncrewed Combat Aerial System. It's a one-way attack drone, and here it is in action. It's strikingly similar to this, Iran's Shahed drone. Iran has spent years manufacturing and supplying them to allies, including Russia. Both Ukraine and Russia have used drones extensively, changing a conflict dominated by tanks and artillery into one of drone warfare. Now Iran is deploying them at scale, and the US is playing catch-up. Unmanned drones are cheap to produce. One Shahed costs from $20,000 to $50,000, according to estimates by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. One US Patriot interceptor, which tracks and destroys incoming ballistic missiles, costs around $4 million. For that price tag, you can get 115 one-way attack drones at around $35,000 each. The Lucas and Shahed drones share a similar design. Both have an aerodynamic nose cone, 2 fins per wing for maneuverability, and a rear propeller engine to avoid heat detection. In the first week of the war, Tehran fired hundreds of missiles and more than 1,000 drones at Israel and Gulf states allied with Washington. It relied on volume rather than precision, launching many drones at the same time to overwhelm air defenses. It's thought that Iran can produce 10,000 of these drones a month, while the US relies on expensive, highly trained crew for their most powerful attacking aircraft. These drones are piloted remotely. If one is destroyed, the operator is safe and the replacement is a fraction of the cost. So attacking has grown cheap, but the relative cost of air defense has skyrocketed. In July 2025, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the Pentagon to cut red tape and speed up deployment of small military drones like the Lucas. But at the same time, defense systems have lagged behind. Militaries are scrambling to develop more tech to battle these cheap attack drones, from electronic jammers and interceptor drones to high-energy lasers designed to disable targets at the speed of light. Many of these systems promise to drive down the cost of defense, but most are not ready yet. The challenge is whether this counter-drone technology can advance fast enough and cheaply enough to match the pace of drone attacks, or if defense against them will still rely on expensive interceptors.
Hora Humani was nearly 9 months pregnant when Israeli strikes began raining down on southern Lebanon in early March. Forced to flee her village, she took shelter in a school in Beirut, and in the process lost access to the doctor who had cared for her throughout her pregnancy. Her stress, she says, kept increasing as she worried about how her displacement would affect issues like breastfeeding and cleanliness. Humani is one of around 13,500 pregnant women displaced in Lebanon, according to the United Nations Population Fund. She was able to give birth in a hospital before returning to the school. Humani Humani's mother-in-law, Sabah Marji, says the joy is incomplete because the newborns are not in their own home. There are over 1 million people who have been displaced in Lebanon since a new war between Israel and Hezbollah erupted on March the 2nd. Also among them was Sarah Shalar. When the strikes began, she was 5 months pregnant with a baby girl.
Of course, I hope that she comes into a life better than this one. That she comes into a life with stability, safety, a family atmosphere, a sense of home, all of these things. Because those are the things that shape a baby. They are what build the baby from the moment they are born.
I know they're working practically 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, trying to finish it. I would hope so. But what I've heard is that it's very complicated for them to finish it.
It gives me more security. I know it's difficult, even in our homes. A renovation is difficult, but after all, when it's finished, you see the change. I wanted to sit here in the garden to visualize. This was an area that you couldn't walk through comfortably. Not only drugs, street stands.
The one thing the crew all agrees on is that it has been motivating, it has been inspiring, and it has fired us up.
NASA's Christina Koch is one of 4 astronauts gearing up for the first crewed journey toward the moon in more than 5 decades. The Artemis II mission is a roughly 10-day, high-speed loop around the moon and back. The launch from Florida's Kennedy Space Center could happen as soon as April 1st, aboard NASA's towering Space Launch System rocket. NASA astronaut Victor Glover.
It'll go when the engine's light at T0. We still have some weather updates and some technical things to get through between now and when the launch window opens.
Cook and Glover, along with NASA's Reed Wiseman and Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen, have spent more than 2 years training for the mission. All of them have been to space before, except Hansen.
So I won't know how to float and fly, and I'll be a bit clumsy up there, so I know that's going to be hilarious and annoying at the same time.
Space enthusiasts are ready for it. Here's Peter Kranis, Executive Director of the Space Coast Office of Tourism.
Artemis II is probably the most significant launch we've had, almost dating back to the shuttle era, because, first of all, we're going back to the moon. That's always an amazing thing, but having the crew on board, that always just steps up the amount of interest that the people have in a launch like that. We're expecting quite a crowd. It could be anywhere from a couple of 100,000 up to 300,000 or 400,000. So we're preparing for the high end just so we're ready. But yeah, it's going to definitely be busy here.
Artemis II will be the first crewed mission of NASA's multi-billion-dollar Artemis program.
We have the opportunity to see parts of the far side of the moon with human eyes that have never been seen before.
While it will not attempt a moon landing, it will send astronauts farther from Earth than any previous human spaceflight, testing the Orion spacecraft's life support systems, navigation, and heat shield performance.
We actually have relay batons. We're in a relay race, and we're not successful till the next missions are successful. And if nothing else, this just fired us up for that all the more.